How did it feel for you to see Rockefeller become what it became?
I wasn't surprised, so I expected it to be. I didn't introduce them for them to fail. I didn't. I like again. There wasn't a plan B. They had to win.
And your skills as a producer, I'm always fascinated by A&Rs. Like Lil Jon was an A&R, but he's also a producer at the same time. So like
Right.
Ghost Town DJ is my boo. He wrote and produced that record. How were you able to finesse being an A&R and a producer? And when did you hone that
I
producing?
was a producer first. I was a producer before I became A&R. I was like the record that I think made somebody say, "Yo, you should be doing A&R," was "Spread My Wings." I made the record before I had a job.
The Troop record.
Right.
Yeah.
And I learned how to make beats in Herbie Lovebug's studio. I learned how to make beats in front of Molly Marr. Like these are the people. These are my constituents. I didn't learn by happenstance. I didn't. You got people who have to find somebody to be apprentices for. Like these guys never taught me. I just saw them do it and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get a drum machine. I'm gonna do that shit." And they didn't go, "This is how you make a beat." They were like, "I just watched. We in the studio." Oh, didn't even know it was producing. You know what I'm saying? Like Herbie Lovebug one time pulled me to the side and was like, "This is producing. This is how you get paid with it."
So how did you Reasonable Doubt? How did it come to be that you were going to be producing on the record, on the album?
He was my artist. What am I not gonna do? I was making his records in the first place. 80% of the records that were made before we made Reasonable Doubt were made by me. So it was the building of what would become Reasonable Doubt. The most important record to get to Reasonable Doubt is not on the album, but is the most important record. I produced that record. The record that made Big say, "Okay, I'm gonna put up this money," was a record I made.
What was that record?
Reach the Top.
That was a record that didn't make the album.
It wasn't supposed to be on the album, but it could have been on the album.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. The record that didn't make the album because we couldn't find the DAT, and it was called "Tell Me How It Feels."
You couldn't find the DAT?
Couldn't find it. You have to understand, like that's how cavalier the process was. Oh, we can't find the DAT. Okay, it's not on the album. It's not. Go find the DAT. It's can't find it. It's not on the album.
Yeah, but how did the initial process of you and Jay coming together to make music together?
I had to ask him a lot. Can we make these records? First of all, I had to find him. Like I found Jazzo, and I was like, "Yo, I want to do an album on you and Jay. I want to sign you and Jay." He was like, "All right, you gotta find Jay." And I was like, No, you gotta find Jay. He was like, "I don't know where he's at." So I first had to find him, and then when I found him, I was like, "Yo, me, you, and Jazz, let's make these records." He was like, "Man, fuck that corny shit." And I was like, "Dude, we gotta make these records." He comes up, we get to the talk, and he goes, "Yeah, but my man's coming too." And I'm like, "Who's your man?" "Sauce Money." So I'm like, "Okay, Sauce Money's fucking amazing too."
Yeah.
So I'm just like, "So you telling me I get to work with 3 of the best MCs I've ever heard? Bet." So I'm just gonna make these records on them. So we're gonna make an album, and we started to work together. There were times when Jazzo wasn't around, times when Sauce wasn't around, and Jay would be at my house. So it became more of Jay was more around than anybody else. So the thought of us making this album as a group kind of became, well, we working on Jay solo. And then we was working on Sauce solo. And Jazz was a producer, so it wasn't necessarily that I was working on him because he made music and produced himself. So it became more of I'm working on Jay and I'm working on Sauce and I'm working on them together because there's a lot of records of them together, and I made practically all of them. But Jay worked faster and harder than everyone else. So if I'm in the studio doing a remix, Jay, come to the studio, get on this remix. Yo, we got time. I got a 24-hour session. It took 8 hours to do the remix. For the next 12 hours, we gonna make records. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna make records in the studio on someone else's budget. That's what we're gonna do. And then one day I realized that I was doing the wrong thing, and if somebody found out, I could get fired. So I built a studio in my house to make Jay's records.
What were you doing that was wrong?
Using the time that was being paid for by another artist to produce another artist.
Got it. Also, too, you're an A&R at Atlantic at this time.
Yeah.
Jay was having a hard time finding a deal.
No, we didn't start looking for the deal. We were putting the records together, and then when we put the record deal together, we couldn't get a deal.
Even though you're an A&R?
Yeah. She told me no. My boss told me no. My boss told me no to Nas because Nas didn't have a demo. So that, in all fairness, he didn't have a demo. I was gonna sign Kelle, and Kelle, his album was done when he was shopping his deal, like, which was crazy because Lost Professor went in the studio, locked in, did Kelle's whole album, and then shopped it. So I was gonna sign it, and it got into a bidding war with Interscope, with Jimmy Iovine.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we lost the bidding war, which was kind of stupid because Jimmy Iovine's label went through Atlantic. So it was almost like we were battling ourselves. So I had to bow out because I'm not Jimmy Iovine. So I can't offer the same way. I can make my offers, and then it goes up to Sylvia, and she has to deal with whether she's gonna match or not match. But she's the president of Atlantic, or the vice president of Atlantic. So you got another vice president who has a label deal through Atlantic. Are you gonna go battle with this guy who's part of your crew anyway? No. Go ahead, you can have him. So I lost Kelle to Jimmy Iovine, which is perfectly fine. I'm cool. But Ock's little man's is Nas. And I'm like, I want the Nas kid. So he brings Nas to the office. I'm like, where's your demo? He's like, we ain't got a demo. I'm just like, you fucking kidding me? This is fresh off the barbecue. Like, fresh. Live off the barbecue. I go to Help for Snuff for Jesus. Oh, yeah, let me get that guy. Bring him here. He sits down in my office. I'm like, give me the demo. He's like, I don't have a demo. Now I automatically go, fuck, I can't sign you without a demo. I can't even ask her. I can't even say, yo, we need to do this. Well, because I thought he was so special, I went into Sylvia's office and was like, you gotta come here, Nas. Just let him rhyme for you. He doesn't have a demo? No. No, we need a demo. And I had to go back in the room and tell him, I can't sign you without a demo. I even had to give him an actual, I had to give him an idea of how serious that was. I said, we just signed DOS Effects. They had a whole album done.
Oh my
So
God.
Imagine DOS Effects, who was going crazy. They were the shit. And Nas, who I can't sign because he doesn't have a demo. And this is before I find Jay. So I could have signed Nas if he had a demo. Jay, big. Like, imagine being able to work with all three.
What was the reason for not signing Jay? Because Jay had demos.
Okay, you know what? You know what's crazy? Ask every A&R that didn't sign him. They're gonna sound dumb to you, and they're only gonna sound dumb because he's who he is. But they just couldn't see what I could see. They just couldn't.
Because to me, it just sounds like undeniable talent.
One A&R was like, "Oh, he sounds like Tretch." And now, be clear, like, Tretch is my man, and I think he's dope. And I'm like, where does he sound like Tretch? Like, how? Like, I was confused, and I just thought to myself, this is insane. It was so insane that I got so mad that I quit my job. I quit my job. I went to work at another company, and then we decided we were going to do it on our own, and that was that. I went to the other company and then was like, fuck the other company too.